viruses come from. If you've been watching the news, you've probably heard of the novel or new coronavirus, which, starting in late 2019, began making people ill in China.
The coronavirus has spread to countries across the world, but officials believe that it all started in Wuhan, China. It's believed the virus may have originated from a market in the city where people can buy an assortment of wild. And so is that sort of stuff, is it regulated at all?
You know, the Chinese government allows the sale of live wildlife in these markets. They regulate 54.
Daring to call for an international inquiry into a virus that's interest. As the Prime Minister was holding the line, Scott Morrison says one key tool on the return to normal is the government's smartphone virus tracker. He was joined by the Chinese Consul General, who turned up with billionaire Andrew Twiggy Forrest to deliver 10 million testing kits and Beijing's talking points. Australia hopes that will be for the world to judge. Chris Ullman, 9 News.
That is transmitted through bodily contact with an infected, symptomatic individual. The virus enters the body primarily through direct contact of mucous membranes, like the eyes or through abrasions in the skin. When inside the body, the virus fuses with tissue cells, invades them, and releases its genetic content into the cell. This is similar to many viruses, wherein the viral RNA uses the host cells to generate copies of itself. The genetic material takes over the cell machinery to replicate itself. New copies of the virus are formed, released into the system, and dispersed. This also causes the cells to explode, sending infectious particles flying. Then overpowers the immune system. The very cells that are meant to fight infection are used as carriers to spread infection to other body parts, including the liver, spleen, kidneys, and brain. The virus attacks almost every organ and tissue in the human body, resulting in an overwhelming inflammatory reaction. This is what causes sudden flu-like symptoms that are the first signs.
Rick, we have to act now!
Their numbers are increasing. We won't survive this!
Mas meu pai tem
Now, there's been no let-up in the Philippines either. 7 more people have died, taking the death toll there to 78. There are also almost 130 new infections. It's been 2 weeks since the main island of Luzon was placed under lockdown. Many are speculating that the enhanced community quarantine could be extended beyond the 12th of April. President Rodrigo Duterte is meeting government officials right now and will address the nation later this evening. Cherry Regalado joins us for more on this from Manila.
But Interior Secretary Eduardo Año has a different take. He says extending the ECQ is not advisable as it would negatively impact the local economy. The Secretary adds that he is confident the government can lift the ECQ if everyone cooperates by staying at home.
How are hospitals coping with the influx of cases?
Well, several hospitals in Metro Manila as early as last week have already closed their doors on COVID-19 patients, saying that they are already operating on full capacity. Plus, they are also dealing with shortage of medical workers as hundreds of their doctors and nurses are already in quarantine. Many hospitals, both private and public hospitals, are running out of PPEs and supplies, and they have been asking for donations as well. 2 weeks ago, private hospitals signed a manifesto asking the health department to designate referral hospitals to look after COVID-19 cases. They warn that the healthcare system will break down if no referral hospitals can take care of the influx of the COVID-19 cases. In response, the government has already designated 3 public hospitals which are now being retrofitted and are transitioning to handle COVID-19 patients.
All right, many thanks for that, Sherry Regalado, speaking to us from Manila.
We need to develop a vaccine. We need to produce it and to deploy it in every single corner of the world.
It's a race against time. There's little chance of beating the coronavirus without a vaccine. But when will it be ready? Scientists across the world are working around the clock to develop one, from China to the United States, Germany and Britain. New technologies are helping speed things up. More than 100 potential vaccines are in development. Some are already at an advanced stage and are being tested on volunteers.
Around the world, more than 100 projects have been launched to develop a vaccine against the novel coronavirus. But it's still far from clear which candidate will succeed. BioNTech was the first German company to be approved for clinical trials. The 200 healthy volunteers taking part in the trial are receiving what's known as a gene-based vaccine.
Thousands of different viral species have been studied and described by scientists so far. Millions more likely exist. They come in many forms, but all species consist of a small collection of genes, stretches of either DNA or RNA that carry information for making more copies of the virus, and those genes are enclosed in a protective coating of protein and sometimes a lipid membrane. All known viruses are parasitic, but most are not parasitic to humans. Instead, some only target plant cells, others only infect bacteria, and so on. A virus reproduces by getting its genes into a living cell. Different viruses do this in different ways, but once inside, the cell acts as if the viral genes are its own genes. It begins reading them and building copies of the virus instead of performing its normal tasks. Coronaviruses are a huge family of virus species that infect animal cells. Some infect chickens, others infect pigs, some infect humans, but most of them are extremely mild. They simply give you the common cold. Corona means crown and refers to the unusually large crown-like spikes sticking out of their membranes. These protein spikes are selectively sticky, sort of like Velcro. They don't attach to most objects but are extremely sticky when they bump into specific molecules found on the outsides of animal cells. Once held firmly in place, the coronavirus waits until swallowed by the cell. It then begins to reproduce at the cell's expense. Different animal species have different types of molecules on the outsides of their cells. Because of this, bird-infecting coronaviruses usually can't infect humans. Their Velcro doesn't hold strong enough to our cells. Unfortunately, the natural process of evolution can sometimes help a virus overcome this problem. When virus genes are being copied during reproduction, mutations can occur. These are either due to simple copying errors or processes called reassortment and recombination. These happen when two or more viruses infect a single cell. In most cases, mutations that change the shape of viral spikes render the virus useless. Their Velcro no longer sticks to any host cells. On rare occasions, however, a chance mutation will just happen to allow a virus to attach to a new host species. If the modified virus is then lucky enough to encounter that new host species, infection can occur. We call this a spillover infection. The virus has spilled over into a new type of host. Early on, during a spillover event, the virus usually isn't very good at infecting its new host. Its Velcro is not a perfect match, and many other challenges might slow the virus down. Oftentimes, the mutations that let it infect the new host also make it worse at infecting its original host. Because of this, many spillover viruses go extinct after infecting just 1 or 2 people. They're usually dead ends. That said, if the virus can survive and reproduce just long enough, natural selection will promote any new mutations that help it better spread and reproduce in the new host population. Positive mutations accumulate over multiple generations, negative mutations are discarded until, bam, a new epidemic is being screamed about on the news. Though it may seem to us that these new viruses just sort of pop into existence overnight, scientists now know there is a long, slow burn before each explosion. Genetic evidence tells us that slowly evolving spillovers have been the cause of almost every major outbreak known in history. In the early 2000s, a coronavirus that used to only infect bats appears to have spilled over into civets. There, it mutated even further and spilled over into humans. We called it the SARS virus because it causes severe acute respiratory syndrome. It spread internationally from person to person, and several scientists were infected in the lab. By the time the virus was contained, over 8,000 people had been infected, over 700 died. A coronavirus from camels also recently spilled over to humans, causing even more deaths. Coronaviruses are not the only types of animal viruses that can adapt to new hosts. HIV spilled over from chimps, most likely when someone cut themselves while preparing chimp meat for dinner. The swine flu came partly from pigs, but we think it actually evolved through a recombination with a pig virus and a bird virus. The 1918 Spanish flu, the big one that devastated populations all around the world, may have spilled over from chickens. While the evidence is not yet conclusive, the new coronavirus might just be one more example of normal evolution. A very similar virus has been found in bats, and another was recently discovered in pangolins. These animals are endangered, they're protected, but they're often used illegally for food, rituals, and alternative medicine in the region where COVID-19 first broke out. Now, there are serious people checking to make sure that the virus did not come from a lab, either by accident or on purpose. After all, the technology to genetically modify viruses really does exist, but it's important to understand that the normal process of descent with modification, acted upon by natural selection, really does produce new viruses.